is Lisa. We're from Cobblestone Estates. Just trying to drop in and give a little bit of an update on our project in Williamsburg that's in Brooklyn, New York. We signed a long time ago our demolition contract. Your demo contract is almost always going to be separate from the whole contract to build out your building. We've been waiting to do that with the coronavirus. We've been delayed, and we're hoping that should hopefully get started on June 1st and get going with that. So that would be just fun to watch and definitely fun to document and share with you guys. The other thing that we came across when we were doing our specs with our architect that we wanted to share that I don't think we had said yet is that your first floor has to be ADA compliant. So we didn't know that. And I think for other people who may be watching this outside of New York, they'll think that these numbers are, crazy, but to us, these things all matter because inches matter in New York City. So your hallway has to be a minimum of 3 feet 6 inches. So if you're building multiple units, you're probably making sure that you are maximizing the livable space, whether that's bedrooms and bathrooms or living rooms or whatever you want. So adding those extra 6 inches because everywhere else you can go 3 foot makes a big difference in the overall layout. Also something to think about if you are a new investor is you really want to be staying at that 20 foot or wider type of home, because as soon as you get into like a 16 or 18 foot wide and that first floor needs that extra 6 inches, it becomes very complicated. Also, the same thing happens in the bathrooms where you might want a separate water closet, a separate toilet room, which is something that we really like in designs, but very difficult to create that on the first floor a lot of times in these narrow buildings. So just food for thought. And Lisa, I think you were going to share some stuff about the building too.
Sure, I was going to talk about saving money. So
Good call.
A big way to save money is in materials, what you're building your house out of. Wood is a lot cheaper than steel, so that's something to keep in mind, and there are different rules depending on where you live. But here we were thinking to do 4 floors of equal size on our property. So our property is 22 by 100. We were going to do something about 50 feet by 22 and have everything be equal. Well, our architect informed us that if you go above 3 floors, with the top 4th floor being, if it's 1/3 the size of the remaining floors, then you can keep it timber. If that top 4th floor is bigger than 1/3 of the other floors, then you need to switch over to steel, which is a lot more expensive. So, obviously we had to change our plans and move things around, kitchens and living rooms and bedrooms and all of that to make I think the layout's going to be extremely
It's spot on.
nice. It's really nice. We're really happy with the way it turned out. But that's something to keep in mind when you are looking at what you can afford and your layouts and all of that. So, like I said, 4 floors of equal size, you're going to have to use steel. But keeping that top 4th floor smaller will allow you to use timber, which has its own, deficits. But for our first major project like this, we're pretty happy with the way things turned out and that information, and it's all working out. I think.
Yeah,
it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah, I think that it makes sense. When we look at it, like we said, we've been doing real estate for nearly 10 years now, and we're just getting into like a massive construction project. And I think a lot of people, overlook at things that they're not paying attention to, and they lose their shirts real quickly. So while it's not as good as it could be, I think in the beginning you make it as good as you should, and then you develop on better. So the layout and the people that end up living there are going to have an amazing experience, but they're not going to have to pay so much more than maybe a building a couple doors down, a couple buildings down, because it wasn't a concrete build. So it saves them a lot of money, which is wonderful. And we're learning as we go along, and then we'll continue to improve things as we move on. So, baby steps in the beginning as investing, I think, is an important aspect.